In 1986, I was a 6-year-old boy sitting in the front pew of the historic San Juan Bautista Mission in San Benito County, California, about 90 miles south of San Francisco. I vividly remember sitting there watching this event unfold in front of me. The experience began with the actors entering from the back of the church, forming a circle and singing their opening number in Spanish with musicians who accompanied them on their guitars. As the performers made their way on stage, creating various formations while still singing and dancing, I remember asking the person I was sitting next to, I whispered, "How do they know where to go?" To which they replied, "They practice." Then my mother appeared, dressed as an Aztec dancer in a beautiful turquoise-colored costume with a dazzling headdress of feathers, doing elaborate movements to a drum and making noise with her feet and hands while burning incense and paying tribute to the four directions. I was completely enthralled. At that time, I don't think I knew what I was watching, but the ritual, the colors, the smells even, the spectacle of it all was completely life-changing. This was my first experience of seeing a play. This was my first experience of El Teatro Campesino, the farm worker theater. I would not be here today, nor would I have a life in the theater without this seminal company located just 10 minutes south of where I grew up. I often tell the story that growing up in Gilroy was difficult. Gilroy, California, the garlic capital of the world. It was a place that I didn't particularly enjoy as a queer, boisterous Mexican youth until I found refuge and acceptance and nourishment with this community of people off Highway 101 along the Central Coast. That first play that I saw, that was called La Virgen de Tepeyac, a tale about the apparition of the Virgin Mary to an indigenous man named Juan Diego. The story goes that La Virgen instructs Juan Diego to build a shrine in her honor and to the people living on that land on the hill of Tepeyac where she appeared. I came to know that story well because just 4 years later, after watching my mother perform, I was performing in the show myself, alongside my mother now. And it didn't stop there. The experience of performing with my family extended to my sister Adina, my aunts, my uncles, and my grandmother. It was truly a family affair. And I'll share more about that in just a bit. El Teatro Campesino was literally founded in the fields of California during the Great Delano grape strikes in 1965. Luis joined the activists César Chavez and Dolores Huerta on the picket lines, and he pitched to them the idea for a theater of, for, and by farm workers. The idea was simple and powerful. Use theater to amplify the voices and the struggle of the migrant workers as they picketed for better wages, better working conditions, and in many ways for their human dignity. Using an improvisational style, Luis and the farm workers created actos, or short skits, that were literally performed on flatbed trucks. These skits became acts of resistance while bringing awareness to the growing revolution that César Chavez and Dolores Huerta were leading. This was theater and activism living side by side. And the beginning of a long and wondrous journey for Luis and El Teatro Campesino as they went from the fields of California to the stages of Broadway and beyond. In other words, the work of the company expanded as Luis began to write more plays and create a body of work that would go on to have life in communities across the world, including his masterpiece Zoot Suit, and the blockbuster film La Bamba. The impact and legacy of El Teatro Campesino are profound. As my mentor, Oscar Eustace, artistic director of New York's Public Theater, once said, El Teatro Campesino, the most important people's theater in American history. To know the history of the teatro in many ways is to know the story of my family. They are so interconnected. Because it wasn't just my experience with the company, the work of El Teatro Campesino seemed to touch all parts of both my immediate and extended family, beginning with my tia Margaret, who in 1978 performed in a production of a play called Rose of the Rancho. Then my brother Josh joined the fun, performing in the world premiere of Soldier Boy in 1981, one of the first productions the company produced when they finally settled and made their home in San Juan Bautista. That same year, my mother traveled to Los Angeles to be a part of the audience for the live taping of Zoot Suit at the historic Aquarius Theater as it was being turned into a feature film by Universal Pictures. Then, in 1987, my cousins Anissa Galvan and Ralphie Chavez were in the workshop productions of another Luis Valdez creation called El Fin del Mundo. The list goes on and on and on. To this day, my tia Margaret has coffee with Luis's wife, Lupe, and they have formed an informal collective of support calling themselves the Comadres. Fast forward to 2004, and I am now living in Baltimore, working as an intern at Baltimore Center Stage, a professional regional theater, and my mother encourages me to reach out to Diane Rodriguez, a producer, actor, and director who has been working at the same theater that premiered Zoot Suit, the Mark Taper Forum, and for many years was the leading actress with El Teatro Campesino. I sent her an email asking for advice about my path and what direction I should take. She responds immediately, and she tells me this: you need to apply to the Yale School of Drama to find your people, to find your community, and to begin your professional life in this theater. April 15th, 2005, I receive my acceptance from Dean James Bundy, and 3 months later, a kid from the fields of California is moving to New Haven, Connecticut to begin a new chapter I could have never imagined. Fast forward to 2019, and I am now standing on the corner of 14th Street and 8th Avenue in New York City when I received the phone call from the then board chair, Laura Papano, offering me the job to be the new artistic director of the Tony Award-winning Long Wharf Theater. I paused. I gasped, literally, and I began to cry. I had been grinding for years as a producer, and I worried a moment like this would never come. But it did, and I've been on the journey ever since. All roads lead back to El Teatro Campesino. As my journey continues, I carry with me every day Luis Valdez, Diane Rodriguez, my entire family, and all the artists the company connected me to over the years. And isn't it remarkable that now, as Long Wharf Theater enters a bold new chapter of bringing theater to the people, activating the many stages of our city, and showing our communities that making great theater can happen anywhere, the spirit and the legacy of El Teatro Campesino lives on. May more theaters, more communities, more leaders, more families like mine be inspired by the visionary work of Luis Valdez and his proposal to the world. Theater of change. Change the narrative. Change the systems. Change the conditions. Change the minds and shift the hearts of this country so that we can all prosper. Fun fact, El Teatro Campesino was founded the same year as Long Wharf Theater, 1965. May the light of both companies, in the spirit of abundance, continue to shine bright for generations to come.
Thank you so much. I've been blessed to know you for a few years since you came to New Haven, but I feel like I know you so much more, and it's really a blessing to hear your story. And I have a number of questions and thoughts, and invite our audience members to join in and post questions in the Q&A. The first one is, when will we see you and your mother on stage together again?
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? Oh, I guess if I were to go back to San Juan Bautista, because they do these plays around Christmas time. It actually alternates between La Virgen de Tepeyac, this story about this indigenous person who has a relationship or is visited by the Virgin Mary, and then it rotates with this other play, this other folklore called La Pastorela, the Shepherd's Tale, about the birth of the Christ. And those are performed in the mission, in the historic mission San Juan Bautista. And it's such a communal kind of celebration. And so I guess if I went back and said to my mom, let's audition, let's be in let's be in one of those shows again, I guess that would be the time to bring us back together to share the same stage.
I want to say it into being, and hope, and maybe a New Haven show as well. You beautifully put your own origin story, and it's interesting to think about the two companies having the same year. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about ways in which you and your colleagues are making Long Wharf Theater again more of a people's theater. And it, of course, had its origins as a very scrappy kind of place, and you're taking it into its future very much as a people's theater. I wonder if you could just talk the audience that we have, which includes 60 plus people, certainly includes people who are familiar about where Long Wharf Theater, what Long Wharf Theater is doing now. But I think maybe if you could give a little bit of context for those who might not be as familiar, and talk some about how, as a popular theater, it's really being renewed. Your team these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Long Wharf Theater, we will celebrate our 60th anniversary, our 60th year next year. We were started, at the birth of the regional theater movement, where regional theaters were popping up in communities all across the country. The idea being that you didn't have to go into New York City or visit Broadway for there to be world-class theater, that world-class theater could happen right in your own, in your respective cities. So Long Wharf was a part of that movement. And we have been around for a long time, and we've created, I think, an extraordinary body of work over the last 60 years. But during the pandemic, like so many theaters, we had to really reevaluate our model, our relationship to our audience, our finances, and it felt like the Luis Alfaro, who's a playwright based in Los Angeles, he called COVID the Great Pause, and he said the Great Pause has become the great possibility. And we thought, what does it mean to live into that invitation of possibility? So rather than renew our lease, which we had been tied to for many, many years, we said, why don't we let go of this building, let go of bricks and mortar, and really focus on people and relationships. Rather than people coming to us, we're going to go to you. What discoveries, what possibilities, what imagination might be unlocked if we literally take theater to the people and activate the many stages that exist across the city of New Haven and across the region. So that is the model, that is the invitation that we are living into. We've only been at it for about a year. And Michael, as you can imagine, there are folks that are cheering us on, like, yes, that's exciting. The model needs to be reimagined. And as we think about the next generation, this is the way to do it. And there are folks that are sad and disappointed, and really, had such attachments to the old building that we were in at the food terminal. And what I say is that we can hold all of that Long Wharf Theater can still be your artistic home. And we have to build bridges to those who never felt welcomed. We have to do a better job of being a space that can hold all of our stories. And that's one of the great promises of the American theater. And it's why I've committed my life to this work, which is that the theater is a space for us to reveal in our collective humanity. It is the space where we can come and learn how to be in relationship, and how to explore our difference, and how to celebrate that difference. We just have to be better architects of that. And so so much of that is informed by where I come from. And I think the things that I learned from Luis Valdez and Teatro Campesino.
Thanks. As you think about now and future, ours is a great labor town. There's a recent New Yorker feature about New Haven that centers on the engagement of the Unite Here unions in community organizing, and both electoral organizing and other community organizing. We are in a time in the country where there's been a renewal of labor organizing, and labor activism is seen, probably most prominently in this very immediate moment in the work that the United Auto Workers has been doing. And I wonder, if you have thoughts, and maybe you could even talk, since your work in Teatro Campesino, other work over your professional life that might have connected with the labor movement in theatrical ways, and whether you think in ways in which Long Wharf Theater perhaps might be engaged with labor organizing in the future.
Yeah, one of the things that I often say, and it's something I say to my students, I now teach in the same program that I graduated from, the theater management program at the School of Drama. And one of the things that I say is that I believe that on its best days, theater is a form of social work. That theater is a catalyst for change. That theater is a place where we can move towards justice. And I think it's all, I think it's all connected. Before I decided to do that theater internship in Baltimore, and before I decided to apply to Yale School of Drama, I was a social worker, actually. I did a volunteer program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, where I did HIV/AIDS work in the South. And so in many ways, I feel like it's all connected, right? Starting with Teatro Campesino, going and doing that ministry work of HIV/AIDS, then moving to Baltimore, and it's just informed my life so much, and it certainly informs how I'm thinking about the work of Long Wharf Theater. The other thing that I'm thinking about is I'm also an organizer with Elm City U-Rock, with Addis Castillo and Kyle Peterson, where we do these in partnership with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. We do these trainings that's called Undoing Racism and Community Organizing. How can we work in community and in our cities to dismantle systemic racism, which is, in many ways, the heart of the matter. We're not going to solve racism in our lifetimes, but we can certainly be agents of change. And so, yes, it's all connected, and I hope that we can bring some of that organizing work to the American theater and possibly even to Long Wharf.
We had a question from someone who's a graduate of Yale and noted that as a member of MECHA, they were most concerned with admission policies for students and faculty hires. Happy to see that in later years there was adding on, in addition to that kind of important activism, there was dance, and asked the question of presence, if you know, of Latinx theater on campus. And I wonder if we might expand that, if you could talk some about theater, Latinx theater in Connecticut, New Haven and Connecticut broadly, and just sort of where things might be in our campus community and in our local and regional community.
Yeah, that's a great question in terms of what are the resources and what are the resources on campus. I mean, I think Casa Cultural at Yale has been such a great resource for me as a faculty member. It was not a space that I necessarily visited when I was a student, but I know that's a tremendous resource. Outside of the Yale campus, I want to lift up Rafael Ramos, who is an organizer, and he has Pregamos Community Theater, And it is all about, I think, amplifying the voices of the Latinx community, and really being a space for us to come to share our stories and be in community together. So those are sort of just two thoughts that come to mind. But I wonder if, I so love that question, and I actually wonder if it's time for us to do even more intentional organizing about finding and creating spaces where we can really tell our stories, and be in community together. Outside of Connecticut, I also founded the Sol Project, which was all about trying to give Latinx playwrights opportunities to share their gifts and share their stories on the most kind of visible platforms. When I first moved to New York City in 2013 to work at the Public Theater, I was really shocked actually by the kind of lack of representation, the lack of Latinx stories, in the smallest houses and in the largest sort of, stages. And so I organized with a group of other artists, and we decided that we wanted to figure out how we could really dismantle and really bust down the doors of these institutions and say, hey, a Latino story is also an American story. And so as you think about these other playwrights that continue to be produced, every year, every season, can we also be at the table? Can our stories be in conversation with all the other playwrights that are being produced in this country? And I'm happy to report that while the initiative started in New York City, it continues to have ripples all across the country, including New Haven. In 2017, the Sol Project partnered with Yale Repertory Theater and produced the world premiere of El Huracán by Charisse Castro-Smith. Charisse and I actually met when we were students at Yale. She was in the acting program, and I was in the producing program. And she wrote a play called Estrella, the Junkyard Queen. And I was running the Yale Cabaret, and she gave me the play, and I was like, we're going to do it. So I produced her first play, as a writer, and Charisse has since gone on to be quite successful. She was the writer and co-director of Disney's Encanto with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and then of course, one of the real kind of highlights for me as a theater producer was actually getting to work on El Huracán at Yale Rep, and Laurie Woolery was our visionary director for that. And I remember I actually brought my mom and my two aunts and my father to the opening night of that performance, which was incredibly special. So, yeah.
We have a question about Bread and Puppet Theater, and they are also featured in the current show Art Protest in the Archives, and shares some origin times and sort of formal resonances in an East Coast setting, and a different setting, but similar in some formal ways to El Teatro Campesino.
Yeah.
I think of a great place in southeastern Kentucky, Roadside Theater, part of Apple Shop, which was actually founded by a New Havener.
Yes.
And so there's all kinds of stuff. But I wonder if you know Bread and Puppet much yourself, if you might talk about them, and whether or not talk about other popular theater that has influenced you, whether you've known it or studied it as you've gone about your own practice, in addition to El Teatro Campesino.
Yeah, I mean, Bread and Puppet, they're an amazing company. Oscar, Eustace, I think still goes, I think every summer to go and work with them, because I think he so believes in the mission of the company. My sense is that a company like that, Teatro Campesino, Pregones Theater in New York, Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, I think a lot of these companies, I think, are connected and inspired by, I think, a commitment of really being theater for and of and by the people. I mean, certainly Joe Papp with the Public Theater also. And so when I think about the inspiration in my life and the theaters that I think I continue to sort of look up to and are very much informing my practice, started with Teatro Campesino, but then certainly the Public. I mean, I think when I was there for the 3 years, I was never confused about why I was showing up to work every day. this idea that culture belongs to everyone. And I was there during a really exciting time. We were working on Fun Home, the musical, and Hamilton. And so it was an extraordinary time. I also, I want to lift up Diane Rodriguez again, who, actually has since passed away, but she was an incredible mentor, an incredible agent of change, and really held things down in Los Angeles as the associate artistic director of Center Theater Group, the Mark Taper Forum, where Zoot Suit had its world premiere. But Diane had an impact really across the entire United States and really across, I think, really across the globe. And that company, which was started by Gordon Davidson, that company also was incredibly influential in my life. And I think continues to, the ripples of that company, I think, to continue. Yeah.
We have a question about your work that you were talking about previously with colleagues in town on undoing racism and ways that you're using arts and theater. I wonder if you could just unpack and talk a little bit more about that work and give us a picture in words of what you're doing there.
Yes. So my organizing work with the People's Institute, which is an organization based in New Orleans. They do these workshops in communities all across the country, but it actually began in New York. And I think it was, again, going back to the impetus for the Soul Project of not seeing sort of ourselves represented on these stages, is we felt like in order for there to be real meaningful systemic change within kind of the off-Broadway and Broadway community, that we actually had to bring these gatekeepers together. So I took the training myself. I took it at Teachers College at Columbia University. And it was a completely life-changing event, just in terms of learning about the history of racism in this country, learning about sort of the systems of oppression. I mean, I think the curriculum I find to be very strong and rooted in history. So that way you can't dispute the facts of how this country was constructed. And so I contacted the organization. I said, would you be willing to come and do a training in New York for other artistic directors, funders, the press, right? The press is a huge voice, and we need them also in how they understand how they are upholding the systems. And it went really well. I felt really proud of the work that we were able to do in New York. So when I moved to New Haven, and I met Ades Castillo and Kyle Peterson, I offered, like, how can I continue to support that work specifically with the artist community? So we've done two trainings specifically for the artistic community of New Haven. And we're trying to figure out ways we can continue to organize, continue to seed change in our organizations. And it's very much influenced, I think, how we have gone about cultural transformation at Long Wharf Theater. I would say almost the entire staff of Long Wharf has actually now gone through the training. And so there's a shared analysis. There's a shared kind of sense of what we're trying to do. There's a shared value system. There's a shared language. One of the most powerful things that the People's Institute says, and I think this can apply to anyone who's inside an organization, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit, is they say we have to be critical lovers of our institutions. We have to be critical lovers of the things that we create, right? The idea being that you can love the organization you're inside, you can love the corporation you work for, and how can you be critical of it in an effort to make it better, to make it more just, so that we are always moving towards justice.
I like that a lot. And as somebody who, in thinking about my own work over time, and a reminder, people are sometimes critical of protest, but people who are taking energy to protest are manifesting their love for a place. If you didn't care about it, you wouldn't do anything. You sit and do nothing. But that sort of critical love that you're talking about, I appreciate that very much.
And the other thing that they say, just to, because I've learned so much from this organization. I really can't speak highly enough of the work that they do. And the training it's not perfect by any stretch. I mean, there are things that can be improved upon, but it's the shared experience and the way they, I think, really create the conditions that allow people to bring them their full selves, and for us collectively to be able to sit in the discomfort, because I think the way that we're going to actually be liberated is if we're all doing the work together in community. And one of the things that they say, one of the things we say to the participants is that you have to move from your mind to your heart to your gut. That the work doesn't live here, because what we do, I think, is we rationalize. That's not my problem, or I'm not, that's, we rationalize. So we have to move from here to here, and the work has to live in the gut. And when we do that, that's actually when we will really, I think, be agents of change and make the world better.
Yeah, appreciate that. And as you were talking, I appreciated you raising up Bragamos, as I noted to you before we got started. Frank and I were at Bragamos and ULA's Dia de los Muertos on Saturday, and it was wonderful walking through the streets, both for the extraordinary artistry and thinking about the event itself, but how it brought people out of their houses as you're walking down Fillmore Street and Clay Street and Blatchley. Yes. And it was just great how it sort of activated and grew over time. And of course, Connecticut's not necessarily a place that it's you can do, as it were, flatbed truck theater. Right. February is a little tough, and we're sort of at the later reaches. But this past week, and a shout out to my colleague Kevin Repp, the curator of the art protest in the archives, and a set of graphic design colleagues in the collective action group, who did an activation with librarians, teachers, and students, nearly 200 people marching through the streets of New Haven from Temple Plaza by the public library and up to Beinecke for the freedom to read. And it was really great to see that. And it was, very much the art was living in the gut and in the feet and on the streets. And so this past week in our town has seen two good activations and manifestations of popular theater. And again, it was, I think, good both for the participants, but particularly on Saturday in Fairhaven, to see so many people coming out and audience members who were not people who may have been into Bragamos itself, and certainly are probably not people who in the past would have been in a Yale Rep or a Long Wharf theater. And I like very much, Long Wharf, the theater for everyone. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about, in the near term, what's coming up from Long Wharf, so that people who might not be plugged into what's going on. You've got a couple shows on the horizon. I wonder if you could just give a little preview of things coming up in the next set of months.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me a little, I know that we're focused on Teatro Campesino, but I so appreciate the opportunity to also talk about the work that we're trying to manifest, the vision that we are trying to manifest at Long Wharf Theater, which is to be a theater company that belongs to everyone. My deep hope is that I encounter really anyone in our city and in our region, and I tell them that I work for Long Wharf Theater, and they say, that's my theater, and that's where I see my stories for everyone. And so in order to manifest that mission and vision, it's going to take all of us working in community to make that happen. And so we are in the middle of our new season, and we're calling that Possibility, a season of possibility, theater of possibility. When we sit more in the questions rather than trying to find the answers, I think that's really when the magic gets made. Making art is mysterious. And so if we can sit in that place of imagination, of discovery and possibility, I think great things can really happen for Long Wharf. And my deep, deep hope, Michael, is that for those who are tuning in and for those who will watch, that you come on the journey with us. Please, please, please give Long Wharf Theater a chance. We are building on the history of innovation. We honor the legacy. We honor everything that happened at 222 Sargent Drive, our old home, and we're bringing all of that. And that is our bridge, I think, to the future. One of the things that I think a lot about when we think about the future of the company is I think about tie to foe. Ty Defoe is this brilliant, brilliant artist, indigenous artist based in New York City. And what Ty says is, he says, if you are not thinking 7 generations ahead, you are not thinking far enough out. And so for Long Wharf Theater, for our organization, specifically in arts and culture, are we thinking 7 generations ahead for the future of our companies? And so what's coming up is we're doing a production of The Year of Magical Thinking, which was conceived by Jonathan Silverstein, based in New York. He's the artistic director of the King Company, and that's going to be performed in homes and in gathering spaces all across the city and region. The idea being that you want to feel like you're in Joan Didion's home. And so I'm very happy to report that the show is completely sold out. So I'm happy to share about it, but there are no tickets. The appetite for the show has been immense, and so that's really exciting. We just announced two more projects for this upcoming season. We'll be doing Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge. Arthur Miller was the first playwright that we produced in 1965. We did a 2-week run of The Crucible. So I felt like this was the right time to return to the dramatist who started it all. And so we're going to be doing a bold, brave new production of A View from the Bridge, directed by James Palmer, in partnership with Doug Denoff. And then we're going to do a new play. It's called Amigan, by Adil Mansour, and that will be in partnership with Woolly Mammoth Theater Company. And we're actually going to be performing that. I think I can't announce the space just yet because we're finalizing, but it'll be downtown on the Yale campus, we think. So that's what we have cooking. And then next year is our 60th anniversary. So the plan is to announce the 60th anniversary season in the next couple of months. 60 years, that's a big deal for a regional theater. And so my hope is that it will be a celebration for our city and our region. I think we have lots to celebrate. And so I hope that it galvanizes the entire region in a wonderful, powerful way as we continue to think 7 generations ahead.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you also for bringing the 7 generations into the conversation. I'll return to that in a second. I'll just note that I put in the chat a link to next week's Mondays at Beinecke, which will feature a Yale student colleague talking about their exhibition on the Oak Street Connector and urban renewal. So more about New Haven. In a certain way, everything's connected, and Long Wharf, the previous theater wouldn't have existed on the property that existed without urban renewal. So it's connected in that way. But in the 7 generations, as you were talking, I was thinking about this year's Wyndham Campbell Festival, which began with a gathering on the cross campus, and we were blessed to have brilliant colleagues, the Ute singers, who are Mashantucket Pequot and Narragansett, singing and drumming and bringing into this space a tradition that goes back nearly 10,000 years in this area. And it was a reminder, and I said to a colleague of ours, we're a rare book library and sort of in an antiquarian business. The oldest document we have is pretty old. It's 200 BCE. It's papyri fragment, but the living legacy of the Ute singers and what they were singing in a continuous tradition goes back 10,000 years. And I said to my colleague, Mike Keller, this was the most antiquarian thing we've ever done. And what was so great about it is that it wasn't antiquarian, it was alive. And helped us, I think, also see, as you're talking about, into the future. I wanted to close with 2 questions. One a question, then I'll follow up with a prompt. And the question is one that I give credit to friend and colleague Kim Pinder, the Dean of the Yale School of Art, who at a meeting recently asked everybody to introduce themselves by saying who they are, what they do, but also what they do to take care of themselves, because she notes it's important that we do that. And she found it interesting to start meetings in this way because it centered that, but also sometimes she got good tips about how to care for herself and the others around the table. So simple question, how in this troubled, frenzied, topsy-turvy world do you look to take care of yourself so that perhaps we can learn from your regimen?
Oh my gosh. Well, my friends, including my partner, like to tease me because I have so I am a big fan of CrossFit actually. I do CrossFit 5 days a week. I'm a actual I have my like I'm like a level 1 trainer. And it, you know, it uh yeah, you know, the journey started, you know, I needed an outlet when I was living in New York. I was going through kind of a tough time and I was like, gosh, what do I, and the workouts are pretty tough. And so for an hour, it's like I can't, your focus is just getting through the workout. And sometimes that's what I need, especially after a really tough day where my mind is always spinning, thinking about, you know, the various problems or the things that I have to think about for Long Wharf Theater, you know, the dinner with the donor, the season planning, the, you know, whatever it is. And so when I walk into a CrossFit gym, it's just me and the workout, and it allows me to just focus on that, and that has been really helpful for my mental health, and just trying to stay healthy. So yeah, so that you know, that's a biggie for me.
Thank you, appreciate it. And closing a question prompt, I want to read a quote that's in the show, in the labels, from Luis Valdez, and ask you just to sort of reflect and close this out with whatever reflections you may have, and give you the last word. So here's the quote. Again, Luis Valdez words. In a Mexican way, we have discovered what Brecht is all about. If you want unbourgeoisie theater, find unbourgeoisie people to do it. Real theater lies in the excited laughter or silence of recognition in the audience, not in all the paraphernalia on stage. Minus actors, the entire teatro can be packed into one trunk. And when the teatro goes on tour, the spirit of the Delano grape strikers goes with it. And so I would just, reflecting on that, maybe Jacob, you could tell us what for you real theater is, and how, just to close this out, a reminder of how, as you go forward, the spirit of teatro itself goes with you. But I'll leave it to you for last words by way of benediction, perhaps.
I love that. That is such a beautiful quote. I mean, you know, I think during my time at Long Wharf, I think a lot about Luis and Diane and Teatro Campesino. I think a lot about my family, because I think about the sacrifices, specifically that my family had, that my family had to make, so that way I could be where I am in this Zoom room, talking to you about my life and the opportunity that I've had, the opportunities that I've had, and the one that I have now as the artistic director of Long Wharf. I really believe that making impactful, heart-stirring, life-changing theater can happen anywhere. And I believe that it is not about fancy lights and costumes and set design or a building. And I think it's about people and relationships, performer and their relationship to the audience, that alchemy that they get to create is the thing that I think is so special and so important. And so I hope, again, I think I just want to maybe restate what I said, which is I hope that folks will come on the journey with us. And the other thing that I want to say, because I think it's important in the context of this conversation, is that sometimes when we talk about theater as social justice, or theater that has something powerful to say, whether it be social, political, economic, that somehow means it's not great theater. And I think that that's not. I think that that's the collapsing of that, I think, is not quite right, because when we look at some of the most impactful, important theater this country has produced, it came out of a kind of spirit of justice, a spirit to bring awareness to the world that we were living in. The Normal Heart, Chorus Line, Hair, Hamilton. And so I hope that folks will remember that as we continue this work and the commitment in the spirit of El Teatro Campesino, that we are still going to make world-class theater, that we're still going to bring people together and help. And my hope is have minds and hearts changed. So please support Long Wharf. Please support the work that we're doing. And to those who are already on the journey with us, know that I see you and I am deeply grateful for you.